Hello and welcome to another episode of Glenmaroch Lane, and it's another episode of Building the, and this time it's building the signals. Right, in today's episode we're going to have a good nosy, a shufties at the signalling system that we're installing in the layout. This is going to be part one. It'll be a two-part series. Part two will come when we've wired it all up and we'll explain what the wiring is. But I think for this part, I'm just going to take you through bit by bit on each signal, why it's there and what it's there for. Right, so we're going to start at this end of the layout. The first signal on the layout from the platform end of Glenmaroch Lane is the ground signal here. Now these are steam era ground signals. There are diesel era and there are a few other different types as well, but we've stuck with basically the earliest set of ground signals, which is the steam era ones. They're specifically because they're the warm white as opposed to cool white, so they look a little bit better and a bit more in keeping in the layout. Again, none of this has been detailed yet, so it's all very raw. So some of them do look like they're sticking out like a sore thumb, but I can assure you, if you're following the layout updates, by the time you get to the end of season 2, they certainly will not be sticking out like sore thumbs. The lights might, but the actual signal itself won't. So anyway, we've got a ground signal here. This is a head shunt. So this is basically, you're coming off the main line and you park there, then you can reverse onto the fueling depot and the hard standing area down here. So we have a ground signal here that allows you to, that basically tells you whether you are free to move or not. So the next signal on the line is this one, 3 aspect with a position marker. Now the position marker indicates this line going off here. Now, we've never spoke about this line, have we, Andy?
No, we haven't, Mark.
Yes. Now this got installed and we kept meaning to tell everybody about it during the updates and never did. And it's been here about 3 months. Basically, the idea of this extra little bit of line that runs down the back of the fuel sheds here was to put the snow ploughs. But then since we put it in, it's become quite useful. We've been stashing stock on here, left, right and centre. But it is a dead end with a buffer at the end, and it is also lower than the rest of the railway as well, because we've deliberately done it so that when we weather this line will look much more distressed than the rest of the layout, as in it's hardly ever used. Now, we could have put a ground signal here to indicate turning for that, but it would have had a position marker. That would have been the correct way to do it. We could have done it with ground signals, and position markers and signals with position markers are much more difficult to get hold of, and they cost more money. But I think we only have 2 position markers on the entire layout, so we did it. The fun we had, oh my word, I bought these little position marker lights, these things down here. I bought them separate and then tried to retrofit them to another signal, but they are so fiddly. Now, I got away with it with the one over there, but on this one, I gave up and we actually bought a signal in with a position marker already installed. So this does look slightly different to the other 3 aspects that you'll see later on in the update when we get a bit further down. 3 aspects, so you've got red, amber and green, basically like a traffic light, same principle. That's all you need to know. We have a 3 aspect signal here, which is for traffic from on this lane heading out of the station going that way. And we have 2 3 aspect signals here, but these have these little extra bits on the top. Now these are called feathers, and these basically indicate leaving the main line. So you will always have a feather and it will always point in the direction of leaving the main line. So even if you're turning right on a bend and there's a feather going left, it's because you're leaving the main line and coming off the main line going left, and vice versa going right. So we have relay boxes that are basically relay boxes, junction boxes, line side boxes.
Line side cabinets.
That's the one. Line side cabinets, whatever you want to call them. These boxes here, them. Basically, the way we've done this is there's one of these pretty much for every piece of trackside equipment. We still have a couple to install. I'm still just making sure that we've got everything we need, because literally every piece of electrical equipment on the railway would be controlled by one of these boxes. So the AWS sensor is automatic. It stands for automatic warning system, and you trip that sensor and it gives you an audio and a visual alert as to the condition of the signal that you're about to approach. So you wouldn't have one in a station because you are already in a position to see that signal. So you wouldn't have an AWS sensor down here. You'd have them on the approach to the station, but not, and leaving the station, but not in the actual station itself. So we don't have to worry about that down here. So basically we have the 4 signals that are in, the main mast signals. We have the ground signal down here, and we have relay boxes that cope with the electronics of all the signals. We've had to run trunking to all the boxes. So as you can see, our trunking is pathed right the way from the signal box all the way around, and it zigzags and splits up and goes all over the bloody place. It's everywhere. Again, we've not detailed this yet, so you will see some wires that will come out of these little bits here and go to the various places they need to go to. Obviously some cables are buried under the ballast, some are visible, so it'll just be at our discretion when we come round to it. You'll see that in the layout updates when we get to season 2. So basically, yeah, that's this end of the thing now. We've also got a couple of ground signals giving you permission to leave the hard standing fueling depot. You have a ground signal here giving you permission to leave the infrequently used siding. And that's pretty much it on signalling at this end of the layout. So we're going to move down to the middle bit now. Right, so moving up a bit, we're at the fueling depot. I've already told you about the 3 ground signals for leaving that siding and this, but we've got these signals here. Now, this is another feather. Now, basically, this left-hand feather here indicates, again, you're leaving the main line. So the main line swoops round to the right, but if you're going to be moving onto the shed, that feather will indicate to say that you are leaving the main line. You would like to think that you would know which line you're going to come off at, because you'll have spoken to the signaller beforehand, so you'll know whether you're going into lanes 1 and 2 or off to the siding. So there's no reason for any theatre boxes or anything like that, which I'm going to get to in a second. So this special device here is an absolute aspects, 2-aspect signal with a theatre box that we've had specially made specifically for this layout. If you're approaching, coming up this lane here, this signal's for you. There will be another one next to it if you're approaching this way. Now, this one will be more complicated. Sorry. This one is more complicated than that one. And the reason is you have more options if you're coming up this way, which would be the correct way to do it, because this is the approach line, the left-hand side. So when you get to this point, you are given options. You have the options of 1, 2, 3, and H. So obviously platform 1, which is the furthest one that way. You have platform 2, which is the basically straight on. And you have platform 3, which is left a bit and then into the station. You also have H, which stands for head shunt. So you would have the option to come down here and into the head shunt. You only have 2 aspects on this, yellow and red, because there is no green. You are either going to get a yellow with a red straight after it, or you're going to get a red to hold you here until such time as your line is clear. The signal on the other side, the one that's missing that we're still waiting on, doesn't have as many options. That only has 2 options, which is P1 and P2. So it'll just say 1 or 2. And again, it'll be a 2-aspect signal, yellow, red. There's no use for green because you can't carry on anywhere else. It's a dead end. So that basically covers that. Now we've got the relay boxes here. Most of these are for points. We've got 2 relay boxes here which cover these 2 signals, and there's a relay box there which covers that signal. That needs a little bit more ballast around that yet, but we'll get to that eventually. So moving on a bit more, we're going to come up to the shed. Again, 3 ground signals, and all they do is basically give you clearance to leave the shed as and when. The steam era signals, and that's pretty much it. Pretty much it. So, off to the distillery. Just before we reach the distillery, I have actually missed a signal out. There is one just before the bridge, which would stop you in case you've left on the wrong line. If you're coming out on the approach line because you've come from like platform 3, because there's no other way of doing it from platform 3, you would skip onto the correct line at this point here using this section here. If there's a DMU part there waiting to come into the station, you could be held at the back of the bridge before you go. This is the other one with the position marker on, as you can see in this shot. The position marker gives you access to the distillery, so you'd be coming off this direction. Moving on, we've got the left-hand lane, so if you're leaving via the left lane, which P1 and P2, you would arrive here. And this can hold you before the station, just in case there's something already in, awaiting to leave, which would leave this way. It's 3 aspect. So again, you've got your red, yellow and green. We're not running 4 aspect signals on this because it's an old line and it was an old branch line. So it's very unlikely it would be. You wouldn't have the double yellows and then down to a single yellow, and then it'd just be done as a basic 3 aspects. So you'd be start, stop all the way. At the end of this line here, there's a platform signal, which gives you clearance to leave the platform into the tunnel. There's no reason for anything special there. It is literally just a 3 aspect signal, red, yellow, green. Coming in this way, again, we've covered that with the bridge signal, so there's nothing more coming this way. However, if you're travelling this way, there's quite a bit. Right, so coming this way along the line, the first signal you hit is this one, which is a double 2 aspect signal. Now, ideally, it should have been 3, but for some reason we can't get them unless they're B-Sport made. And to be fair, it just wasn't worth B-Sport making them. A 2 aspect signal would do the job adequately anyway. So you've got red and green. So you'd either be held here. If there was something coming down this line that wanted to cross over to this line, you would be held here, coming out of the tunnel this way. And if you were coming off this side in this way, you would be held here. Now, this siding has retained its original signalling system because that was once a tunnel. So the idea behind this section here is once long ago, it would have been a triangle section. So there's a big main line that runs that way, and this double line would have peeled off that way. This double line would have peeled off that way. And over time, they've shut down this section of line coming in. So there's only one way in and one way out now, which is through this. However, they've retained the track and turned it into a siding to use for the distillery, which was a little bit of extra storage space for the distillery. So it's retained its original signalling equipment, albeit not used very much these days. There is a little ground signal here, which controls traffic leaving the distillery's hard standing. And again, this line is covered by a double signal. So that's the theory and the thinking behind the signalling on this layout. That's as far as we've got so far. Now, the other thing to mention is the grids are installed. So every time you pass a signal, that grid senses the train going past. And obviously it's picked up by the relay box, which immediately throws the signal red because you're in that section. So that's what those grids are for. There's one of them in front. I haven't done this bit yet. There's one of them in front of every signal, apart from these down here, because I haven't done them yet. We've got them, but I've not put them in. That's a job. That's a job that needs doing. So that's basically one of the outstanding jobs that needs doing, but we'll cover that in season 2. There's still plenty to do yet. There's a lot of paint to go down. There's a lot of weathering to do. This hasn't come alive yet. It looks good. I think it looks good, and we get a lot of people saying it looks good, but you haven't seen anything yet. The amount of detail that's got to be piled into this in season 2, it's got a long way to go yet. So keep tuned. Season 2 coming soon. There'll be a little build coming out soon. I'm holding off with a little build because I want to get a little bit more done on the wiring, specifically the automation of the signalling and the block detection, and the introduction of iTrain control systems. I want to get a bit further with that first before I do another little build. So I know I keep saying it's coming, and it is coming, but I want to make sure I'm providing good content for you. So I need to make sure that there's enough to fill an episode of the little build. And quite frankly, all we've done is just finish off the scenics, and it's not enough. So once I've got some wiring done, I will be doing the little build will probably be the next video out. We have 2 specials, speaking of next videos out, we have 2 specials coming out. One's an extremely short one, and it's more of a public service announcement. And then we have the shocker, and it is a shocker. It's difficult. You see what I mean when it comes out, but you don't want to miss that one because your head will pop, because mine certainly already has. Anyway, I digress. I'll leave you to it. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe. What's the other one? That's it. Like, subscribe and comment if you can. There's plenty more to come, and we have some pretty big announcements on the way within a few days of release of this video, let's put it that way. Take care, I'll see you next time.